Good morning. My name is Paul Young and I live in Peterborough in Cambridgeshire, but I'm a Dorridge lad. I was born here in Dorridge in 1960, left in 1970, been back a couple of times since then. I think this is the third time I've been back, and the plan today is to do a video, a sort of retrace the haunts of growing up here in the 60s. I have a very fragmented memory bank of 1960s Dorridge. Little bits that make no sense, little bits that do make sense. My head is full of nonsense like this lot.
Five, four, 3, 2, 1. Thunderbirds are go.
'60s, eh? Brilliant. But no, I have a lot of memories, snippets of growing up here, but none of them make a lot of sense, and I'm hoping this walk today will put some meat on the bone and make a bit more sense of it. And if you grew up in the 60s in Dorridge, it might mean something to you as well, so do chip in, add your comments underneath the video or on a Facebook group if this video is appearing on there. Do chip in, put me right where I'm wrong. If you remember me, do give me a shout. This guy over here, making a bit of room, that's me. Animated version of my Dorridge Junior School photograph in the late 1960s. If you remember me, you'll remember that handsome guy and not this one. But yeah, I'm going to wander around and try and recall all that I can from 1960s Dorridge. Yeah, come along with me and hope you enjoy it. Although this place had nothing to do with 1960s Dorridge in terms of my memories, this was supposed to be the site of St. Phillips Church, the Church of St. Philip, where I was baptised in early 1960. As I say, it's not a big memory for me, but I wanted to visit it. On Google Street View, as you can see, the church is still standing, but then I realised that Google Street View image is about 3 or 4 years out of date, and it was demolished a couple of years ago. So my old place of baptism and christening has gone, which is sad. I'm not a church goer, but I'd love to have seen the building. I can put some pictures up now. It shows you what it should have looked like. These are fairly recent. These are just before it's demolished, I presume. It was quite an unusual building, and it wasn't listed, which made it vulnerable, and apparently it was falling apart, subsiding, so it was either spend a lot of money on propping it up or build a new one. So they built a new one. I'm going to wander around actually and have a quick look at it. I don't think I like the look of it, but I'll take a quick peep. I'm only really down here to get in the car parks. I couldn't find anywhere else to park. This is not part of my patch from the 60s. But yeah, I've got to visit the church ground at least. It's a very modern build now. That window up there must have been all that's, or must be all that's left of the church that I was baptised in. Sad, really. It's a pity they couldn't keep the original standing, but it wasn't listed, so they weren't obliged to. There you go. St. Philip's Church 2023. I suppose it's progress. I'd love to have seen the old one, but it's gone. Right, I'm going to head down into the village now, because as I say, this wasn't my patch or our patch in the 60s. Never came down here. never passed the bridge really, the railway bridge in the village. That was kind of our boundary, because there was nothing down here for us kids to come down to that we knew of. Growing up in 60s, Dorridge was, as a kid, was football, railways, conkers, football, more railways, more conkers. That was pretty much it. Sounds boring, but you made your own entertainment back in the 60s, no gaming, no nothing. And it was great, we loved it. We loved it, and I hope to dig up some of those memories today. But railways were a big part. I mean, Dorridge is a railway village. It only exists because of the railways. So we spent a lot of time at the railway station, at the level crossing, whatever. So it is going to feature heavily today. There's actually two bridges here in parallel. That's because in the early 30s they moved the stature of the station at Dorridge from 2 lines to 4 lines, and they only had a bridge that carried 2, so they had to build another one to carry the other 2 lines. And when we get to the other side, I'll show you a fantastic picture dating back to before 1930s. It shows the original bridge, which was a single bridge, which is all it needed to be. And pretty much the same scene today. Bit busier. Well, we're going to head up to the station. For me, this was the iconic view of Dorridge village, walking up to the station, up station approach. Never really changes. Classic Great Western Railway station, Great Western Railway. And sneak in the way we always used to sneak in back in the 60s. I think it's still there. Been tidied up a bit since I last came here. Looking quite nice now. I'll put up a few photographs showing pretty similar location to this. I mean, it's changed significantly. Still got some of the character. You've lost the canopies that used to be on here that were very iconic for a Great Western Railway station. The only thing that's really still here that I remember, apart from the main building, is the footbridge up ahead, which hasn't changed a whole lot. The only difference now is it used to go straight across to what used to be another platform over to the trees on the left, over by the trees on the left, sorry, which was platform 4. We never went on there as kids, but that footbridge used to go all the way across. and down on platform 4. And of course it's truncated now, as there is no platform 4. We used to spend all our time on the middle platform, which is now 2 and 3, I suppose always was. So I'm going to head across there. Hopefully all the commuters have moved on now. This gets quite busy earlier in the mornings. We've got a bit of a canopy on the main building, but I don't think that's original. Might be wrong. Nice and quiet.
We would like to remind all customers that e-scooters are not permitted on Chiltern Railway's trains or at stations at any time.
Don't have one of those. Yeah, this used to carry straight on, and down on the long lost platform 4. Back in the 1960s, where this sort of greenery is behind this fence, used to be a big signal box. It became quite an infamous signal box because it was attributed as being, or the signalman that worked in the box was attributed really as being the blame for a tragic railway accident that happened here in 1963. I mean, I was here then, but I was only like 3.5 years old. It was about 60 years, almost to the day. It was in August 1963, and it was the signalman working here who got it wrong, by his own admission, that caused the accident and caused the loss of 3 lives. I mean, basically, there was a steam engine on what they called shunting duties. He was working at this end of the station. His job was to go and pick up some wagons which were in a yard, which was where the car park now is. You just see some cars behind that fence. That used to be a siding. There were wagons there. It had to collect a couple of those. It then had to come back off the siding onto the line, and it had to make a pretty treacherous trip across those 2 lines and these 2 lines to get to another siding that was in the distance through that bridge, collect a couple more trucks, and then he had to sort of push them backwards with the engine at the back across all 4 lines onto that distant line here, on the one furthest from us, which is the main line. It's the main line from Birmingham to London, and he had to push those wagons all the way back down that line against the flow, as it were, to the old transporter yard, which we'll talk about later on, which was sort of off Poplar Road, and about 200, 300, probably more than that, let's say 400 yards down this line, and that's where he had to push them through. So obviously the signalman had to get that right, and he didn't. He made a mistake. He left He left the main line as a go, 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 no problems, full steam ahead for an approaching express train that went through Bentley Heath crossing, which we'll see later, at about 80 miles an hour before the driver of that train realised he could see a signal on the approach to the station that basically said stop, and he couldn't stop that. I think 14 coach express train, he couldn't stop that from 80 miles an hour to 0, but he slammed the brakes on at Bentley Heath. By the time he hit the station here, he was doing about 30. By the time he hit where we are now, he was doing about 20. And unfortunately, the rear carriages of the shunting train were about here, about where we are now. And he hit the back of them at about 20 miles an hour. Went through the first truck, hit the second truck, which was loaded with Land Rovers and was more formidable. That used to be a brick-built bridge ahead. It's now got a metal top. But I think the second wagon hit the sort of stone brick parapet and didn't move any further, and it just caved in the front of the Western hydraulic engine that was pulling the express, D1040 Western Queen, if I recall correctly. Unfortunately, the 3 guys in the front cab died. The people in the steam train just jumped off because they saw it coming. The steam engine wasn't damaged in the end. Even the diesel engine, even though it was pretty badly battered, as you can see from this picture, was restored and was back on the lines again. So it was just a tragic loss of 3 lives, really. And the signalman admitted in the official report that he got it wrong. And as I say, it cost the lives of 3 guys on this spot. A tragic incident, as I say, nearly exactly 60 years ago to the day. As kids, we loved this platform because the lines on the right are the main lines. We kind of knew the trains that were going to come through here. Pretty boring stuff, straightforward stuff. But the lines on the left were kind of what we called the freight lines. They're known as the relief lines. But back then, anything that was unusual, freight trains, would come through on the left. So if we had a signal showing there was a train coming for those tracks on the left, you know, that was the exciting moment, because you never quite knew what was coming through, and it was always something worth seeing. So that's why we hung out on this platform when we came down here. No idea how it all works today. It looks like there's passenger trains on all lines, so it's changed somewhat. But there used to be a platform across there, platform 4 on the left of these 2 lines. There's absolutely nothing left of it now, by the looks. Good days though. We actually spent more of our time during our railway phase at the level crossing. We preferred that, but we did come down here. And we loved railways. I mean, big boys' toys and all that. You know, we were train spotters, I think, later on in the 60s. We didn't know about such things, collecting numbers and putting them in a book. We didn't even know that sort of thing existed at first. We just loved being around trains. As I said earlier, Dorridge is a railway village, built up around the village, built up around the railway and built up around the station. You know, the station was really the first thing here of significance, and the village grew around it. So I make no excuses for being a train spotter, or was. They say the design of the building can be attributed straight back to the legendary Great Western Railway engineer Isambard Kingdom Brunel, because he was a part of the original company that owned these lines before the Great Western Railway, which I think was called the Birmingham and Oxford Junction Railway. And Isambard Kingdom Brunel was one of the directors of that. So the original station here, which probably now just is, I'm not even sure the original station building is the one we see now. I mean, the one on the right, I think that may well date to 1930s time. I think there was an older building, but he put his mark on here during the time he was with the original railway company, way back in the sort of 1850s. I don't think he'd be too impressed with the signs. You think they could do something, come up with something a bit better than that. Looks like it's broken in half, but it hasn't. That is the design. Shouldn't moan. looking up towards Bentley Heath level crossing. That siding on the right was where that steam train was trying to push his trucks before that express came. Was never going to make it.
Bentley Heath, Dorridge Junction, Hackney, Blakedown and Hidden.
Closed. All tickets and machines now. The old Forest Hotel still standing on the right there. Been around a bit. Anybody from the 60s remember what this building used to be? It's a sort of cafe restaurant now, but I'm pretty sure it's a Midland bank. I have recollections of there being a Midland bank on this site. If you know, let me know. Back in the 60s, one of those shops was a sweet shop. Definitely, I think it was the Barber 93 shop, it might have been the Ideal shop, but it was a sweet shop, old-fashioned, jars on shelf sweet shop. We used to go in there and we used to eat bucket loads of what we called lemon crystals. It's like sherbet, teeth-destroying stuff. And I'd love to know what it was called. Some people told me it was called the candy box or something, but I don't think it was. Some have said it was called Morgan's, which is a bit more familiar, but if you know what that sweet shop was called, do let me know, because it's doing my head in really, and I know it was there. It was a shop we always went to for our sweets. As kids, we didn't really have many memories of Station Approach. I've always wondered if there was a fish and chip shop here in the 60s. If you know the answer to that one, I'd be interested. I'm not sure there was. I know there is now, and it's a good one, but yeah, was there one here in the 60s? I don't know. The one shop we did know about as kids was the post office. And the only reason we knew the post office as kids was because they sold football cards, those little packs of 6 cards that you used to swap with your mates. You used to have a little stick of pink bubble gum inside. The post office was the end building here, where it says Station Approach in front of it. Always remember the steps. Yeah, it was that left-hand building. I might have a picture. If I have, I'll put it up. Yeah, 6p a packet. That's 6 old pence a packet of football cards. Every kid in school used to collect them and swap them. Very familiar sight, 60s, 70s, 80s, hasn't changed. Different shops. This used to be the main sort of shopping square in the 60s. And again, as kids, the only shop we knew was the newsagents because it sold sweets and comics and whatever. I'm going to wander around there. It's certainly not a newsagents anymore. That's if I can cross the road. I'm probably choosing the wrong place to cross. Tesco Express down here now, of course. Yeah, the newsagents was, I think, the end one. It's one of those two end ones, either Enzo & Co or Alan Tyler Opticians. I think it was Enzo & Co. I think it was the end one. The village newsagents. As I say, as kids, comics and sweets. Used to go in there, they'd give you a bag and you'd get some sort of 8 for a penny flying saucers or blackjacks or fruit salads and whatever. I think for about 4p old money you'd have a good bag of sweets. But we preferred the other one down by the bridge, which is why I want to know what it was called. Don't think I'll be needing a hair salon. The shops opposite just weren't here. Full stop, end of. I don't know what was here. The maps just show a blank. These are all post 1960s. So they don't mean anything to me at all. So it was this precinct plus station approach, and that was the shops basically. This is the bottom end of Poplar Road. This is the old bit. This is the 1900s, early 1900s Poplar Road. And there used to be a couple of shops here. There used to be a sort of poultry shop, butcher shop on the right. And where the window is used to be a coal merchant's. Yeah, most of these houses date to like the first few years of the 1900s. There might be some 1890s stuff, but pretty much all around that time. And this was the original Poplar Road. It only went a short distance and then that was the end of it, and it was open fields again. I usually have date stamps on these buildings, but I can't see any just to prove my point. I used to have a friend down here. I remember his name was Nigel Williams. If you know Nigel Williams, if you are Nigel Williams, you lived somewhere down here, you had a train set. That's one of those fragmented memories I have. It was somewhere down this end of Poplar Road anyway. I might be slightly out. There's a date stamp up there. 1904. So I was about right. Magnificent, whatever you call it, on the wall of that cottage. Is it Charon's cottage? Very nice. on this site here, this is a fairly new build. This used to be the village hall, the first village hall in Dorridge. I'm told by people they went to discos here, so that must pretty much put it in the 60s, 70s. Couldn't be any earlier if they went to discos. So it must have been here in the 60s. The bottom of Hanbury Road. We will be walking around Hanbury Road, but I'm going to go in the top end and come round. That's where my schools were. Yeah, that's where the village hall was, according to old maps. If you've got any memories of that, or you want to tell me I'm wrong, make sure you do so. So we've now crossed over from early 1900s to late 1950s into 1960 when these were built. This is the sort of second phase of Poplar Road. Just trying to think whether my mate Nigel Williams, whether his house and the Williams family were actually up here. I really can't remember. I'm just too far back to remember detail like that. It might be one of these. I think it was further back, but I don't want to do him a disservice if he had one of these bigger, posher houses. Now all these buildings on the left are new. There used to be a transporter yard, MAT Transport Limited, and they had transporter lorries turning up every day of the week, delivering Rovers and Land Rovers from the Longbridge plant at Austin, and they'd collect them in this yard, and then they'd take them by train down to Southampton for export on transporter trains. I'd love to see a photograph of that yard. There isn't one. There's people who remember it, so I'm not going mad. There are people that work there, so I'm not going mad. But there's no photographs. I suppose it wasn't a very glamorous thing to photograph, but it's almost opposite my house, so I always remember it. Something I also remember very clearly was the ash path as we knew it. There was a path coming up here which I will be going down later on. I'm not going to do it now. I've got to do a proper circuit, but I will come back to it and we will go down there. As kids we went down there, ate a fish in the stream, but also it was a shortcut to Bentley Heath level crossing where we spent a lot of time. So I'm looking forward to doing this. I tried, I think 10 years ago to get through, but it was overgrown. I'm told you can do it now because there's a lot of new houses down there and they've tarted it up. So we will be going down what we used to know as the ash path pretty soon, but not now. The ash path is where that faded wooden fence is just in front of that blue car. Where we're walking now, 6 foot to my left, was a stream which we used to fish in with our nets. Gone. It must be culverted, it must be underneath there. It can't vanish. And it used to run along the ash path, which used to be made of fly ash. The footings were fly ash. And you can see now it's all been concreted, so I'm hopeful we can get through there later on. Right, unfortunately it's dustbin day today, so I'm not going to be able to get many images without dustbins everywhere. Now if you lived anywhere near Poplar Road and like me you were football mad, you'll know the road we're coming up to on the right here. Edstone Close. I lived about 2 or 3 houses up from here, as you'll see later. I'm going to go down Edstone Close one more time. In the 60s, this is where you came to play football. All this is sort of 1959-60 housing. And Edstone Close had a green in the middle of it, which was fatal if there were lads around who wanted to play football, because there's nowhere else really in this area where you would go and play football. And there's a kiddie down there playing ball now. So yeah, we used to come down here and play football until the residents chucked us off because we got too big. Even though we were only 7 or 8 years old, they didn't like it. And we had a good few years here playing football, but as I say, we started to get kicked off. So you'd have a couple of hours of football, get chased off by the natives, and then head off to the railways. That was a typical day in the school holidays. I used to have a couple of good mates as well that lived around Edstone Close. I have no idea their names, cannot remember them. So again, if you're that person, give us a shout, give us a wave. Not sure there was ever a path that went through it back in the 60s. Maybe there was. Doesn't look like it's new. My sort of faded recollections were just of a green area. Yeah, I used to make our goalposts as you did back in the day, with your jumper, whatever you could find. 2 sets of jumpers, you had a football pitch. Not changed much, not changed at all to be honest, apart from the trees are bigger. I haven't got any photographs of Edstone Close. Let's head back. Yeah, my mate lived over there. Definitely had one good mate. I remember going around knocking on his door endless times. Can so-and-so come out to play? As you did. He lived somewhere up there. Right, coming back out onto Poplar Road now. Going to cross over, see if I can get some footage of where I was born. It's always difficult filming people's houses. I don't like doing it. It always looks suspicious, so I'll do what I can. I'd actually love to go inside it or see the back garden and all that sort of stuff, but my only route in there is through my old next door neighbour who still lives next door. But I don't want to sort of impose on her. We'll take what we can. Some right dirty looks if you're carrying a camera. People are just suspicious. 118 is the one with the grey car on the drive. That's where I was born, and I was born in that window top right. That's the bedroom I was born in. My parents bought that in late '59. Changed a bit. I had another close friend who lives somewhere in front of me now, a bit further up Poplar Road, and the name Moody keeps coming back to me. Moody with a Y or Moody with an IE. I think his name was Gordon. I don't think I'm making that up. Cannot find any trace of him in any directories, but if you knew a Moody family that lived here, if you knew a Gordon Moody, if you are Gordon Moody, I'd love to hear from you. But they live somewhere here. Now from 1964 onwards, this was a familiar walk with my brother up from Poplar Road, 118, to Hanbury Road up ahead, because that's where school was. Again, very fragmented memories of this, but I do remember one year having snow that came up to above our knees, bearing in mind we were youngsters, but it seemed like a blizzard from hell. I think we were sent home from school, but my mum and dad were both out, so I can remember us being stranded on the driveway in very cold temperatures. I don't think we worried too much. I think we thought it was fun, as you did at that age. But yeah, we used to walk around here all weathered. No driving to school or any fussing. If it rained, it rained. If it snowed, it snowed. You still walked to school, as did everybody else. I don't know how close we're going to be able to get to the school. I did write to them a couple of days ago, or emailed them and said what I was doing. Any chance I can get anywhere near the school? There may be a public path that goes through. If there's no obvious reason why I can't walk down it, I will walk down it. But it may be gated and closed, in which case I won't see it, which is a shame. I think the infant school is still recognisable. If I can't get down there, I'll put up any pictures I can find. This used to be the entrance to the school back in the 60s, and still is, I think. That sort of railing in front, I'm pretty sure, was there in the 60s. If it isn't that one, there was another one pretty similar. That's where the parents used to be hanging out, if they did come and meet you from school, or if they did take you to school. That was your meeting point. Now, I don't know whether you can walk up this path, we're soon going to find out. This was the path to Dorridge Junior and Dorridge Infant School. Let's have a look. It seems to be open. I think it is a footpath now. Is it closed? I do not know. No, it's closed. It's a shame. But it's the age we live in now. Cameras and schools don't go. Junior school on the left. Yeah, junior school on the left, infant school on the right. I can't show you, unfortunately. There you go, never mind. Somewhere down here off Hanbury Road was another pathway which should be open that goes to a play area, which I think I did visit last time I came here. It hasn't changed really. It was instantly recognisable. We didn't come here very often. I don't know why. It just wasn't on our tour of areas that we used to hang out in. Maybe because there were bigger kids here and we decided to steer clear of them. But yeah, we didn't come here very often, but we did come here, and yeah, instantly recognisable. I'm pretty sure it's down here somewhere, unless I'm going nuts. Is that it? Let's go have a look. Cameras and kids' play areas don't really go too well together, so I'll grab what I can. I think the play area is on the right. Looks like there's a school entrance on the left, so maybe we will see something of the school. No, the kids are out, can't really film that. But yeah, that's the primary school on the left, as it is today. At least there's no kids here. You can hear Dorridge infants even if you can't see it. That'll have to do. Now, that slide in the centre there definitely was there in the 60s. I remember that very distinctly. There used to be some swings on the left. They've gone. There's some there, but they're not even moving. That's fairly new. That climbing thing's new. I think most of this is new. That slide is not new. That slide was there in the 60s. I think most of the rest of it, if not all the rest of it, is gone. There was a spinning roundabout. That's not there. Definitely wasn't a zip wire. We'd have loved that. Yeah, this is all new stuff apart from the slide. I do remember it. Better equipped now than when we were here. Right, heading down Hanbury Road back onto Poplar Road, in theory. Let's go and find this ash path and take it on. Oh, the stream has gone. There used to be a stream just immediate left here. It's now houses and gardens. We used to fish in it. We used to race little bits of sticks down it. Yeah. It was a pretty popular spot for the kids around here. God knows where it is now. It must be underground. Let's see if we can get round. Looks like it's been culverted down there. Can't really show you on the camera, but right. Totally unfamiliar this, but used to have wire fencing either side. If you wanted to go through it, you could. But you got the railway on the left, and on the right we used to have the brickworks, which was still working. The Bentley Heath brickworks used to be a big quarry there. So as kids, you didn't go through that. Even we were too scared to do that. In fact, these concrete poles are what used to hold the wire, so they're still here. Looking a bit more familiar now, used to be overgrown. That's great to be able to get through it. Last time I walked down here it was 1969. So It's a long time ago. Didn't have this brutal fence on the left, as I say. It used to be wired fence you could pop through. We used to catch little frogs in the stream that ran to the left of us. Things we got up to, nice and overgrown, which is how it always used to be. Yeah, it would be, I lose my bearings, but I think the brickworks were to our right, all the way from here through to the level crossing. I don't remember it being active, but I'm assured it was active in the 60s. I think it closed in the late 60s. Getting tangled up here. Just remember there being a quarry, big hole in the ground. Looking at it and thinking, no way am I going near that, even though we could have done. Keep your heads down. I have to be honest, I didn't think I'd ever walk this path again. I know it's just a path, but it has as prominent a place in my 60s memories as anywhere in Dorridge. I must have travelled up and down here so many times. Used to race along here if we heard a train coming as well. Try to get to the crossing, otherwise we wouldn't see much of it. But yeah, great to see it's still here. I think it is a public footpath, so it has to still be here. But you can actually get through it now, which is great. Nearly there. I'm glad it was a bit overgrown. It would have been boring if it had been cleared completely. Brings back some memories. And here we are, Bentley Heath, level crossing. And boy did we spend some hours here. The only thing that's still here really that dates back to the 60s is the footbridge, and that's kind of been panelled. They used to be open, those that sort of trellis work was open, you could put your feet through it, dangle your feet down, and you could see the trains through it. Oh yeah. Yeah, this is how the bridge used to be. Just open trellis work. You could see through, I suppose, health and safety and all that sort of stuff. It's panelled it up. Back in the 60s this would have been a disaster because you wouldn't be able to see, except the tall ones like me. Down in those brambles there, this side of the footbridge, between the track and the steps up, used to be Bentley Heath signal box. Put up a couple of pictures. I had the privilege of being in that signal box on a couple of occasions because the guy who worked there lived very close to where my parents lived. They knew the family basically, so occasionally he'd shout out the window, "Do you want to come up?" None of my mates could go up, but I was allowed to go up. It did make me very popular. Quite a scary place as well. Used to open the gates. They've had barriers then, we had gates with a gigantic ship's wheel, and it took some turning, and he used to let me turn it, and I used to panic thinking if I don't turn it fast enough, the train's going to go straight through the crossing. It's the sort of stupid thing you do think of when you're that age. Yeah, very sad to see it go. First time I came back here, it was still here. And then it vanished. Just no trace of it, gone. kaput. Shame really. And yeah, no barriers back then in the 60s. There used to be gates. And over that other side where you got that sort of triangle of fencing, I'm pretty sure that probably was the old fencing which they chopped up and modified to what it is now. That fencing used to stretch out down to where that sort of spotlight is, and we'd sit on that. And the gate used to, when the gate used to be open for a train to come, or closed for a train to come, whichever way you want to look at it, it would reach to about 18 inches away from that fence. So we'd just lean on the gate as the train went past. Noisy, sorry about that. Yeah, we'd lean off the fence onto the barriers to see the train come back. And depending on who was working in the box, we'd also ride on the gates, which was only allowed by some of them. But yeah, we'd jump on the gate as he was about to swing it back open again and have a free ride. God knows how they allowed us to do that, but they did. But that was our spot. I've got a photograph actually, I just remembered. I've got a photograph here which predates, well I think it was early 60s. And you can see a kiddie sitting on exactly where we sat on. That could have been me. It wasn't. But yeah, that was exactly what we did, sitting exactly where he is. Many great memories here. In the early 60s when there were still steam engines, and if you saw steam coming out of the station, you'd dare each other to sit on this bridge, which as I say was open trellis back then. You'd dare each other to sit above whichever track that steam train was coming on, so that when it went underneath you it absolutely buried you with smoke, probably changed the colour of your clothing and everything. And of course we'd all sit there, brave as anything, until it got to within 10 yards and some big heavy freight engine. It was just too scary, we'd just dive out of the way. But we'd always pretend we were going to stay there. I can't remember the rail layout here at all, to be honest. I think there might have been another track to the left there in this yard, some sort of siding. I just don't remember. The old transport yard, the MAT transport yard, would be pretty much up there, I think, just as you hit the bend there. It was on the left. I don't know where those trees have come from, they weren't there. It was an open yard, and that siding on the left there, I think used to feed into a couple of other sidings that backed into the yard where they'd load up their cars onto the transporter wagons. And then I don't know how often the trains ran, whether it was daily, twice a day, once a week, twice a week. But they'd take them off down the main line to Southampton docks for export. And they were Rovers, mainly Land Rovers, not just Land Rovers, but mostly Land Rovers from Longbridge. Right, no trains coming, that's disappointing. Might get one on the way back. I've got to see one train here surely. I was originally going to come on a Sunday, because on a Sunday there's a steam train that comes through routinely, up one way and back the other. The Shakespeare Express, I think it's called. Runs from Birmingham to Stratford and back, if I recall. And that would have been great to see a steam train going under that bridge, but I didn't want to come on a Sunday. Right, we didn't venture much beyond this crossing. This was another of our boundaries, just like the railway bridge in Dorridge was, but there was one place we used to wander to down here, and it's hard to recognise because this was all open fields back then. And you can see they're very new build houses, but yeah, this was all open fields, horses, hedges. Very nice houses as well. Very expensive houses. They look really well established, but I suppose, I don't know when they built it. They have probably been here a few decades now. But yeah, this was a country road, basically, with trees and hedges all around. And we'd wander down here towards the end of the school, summer school holiday, and we'd come for our conkers, because this was the spot. This was the spot, sorry, where you came for conkers. And I thought the place that we went to will not be here. It will be buried under these houses, but much to my surprise and delight, for some reason, whether it's protected for some reason, it's still here. So I've got to come down, just have a quick look. And again, anyone from the 60s will know exactly where I'm going to right now. And it's signposted. Conker Lane. I used to wonder if we just called it Conker Lane, but it actually is called Conker Lane. And it's still here, gobsmacked. And this was lined with conker trees, and it still is lined with conker trees. I'm a little bit too early. But yeah, we'd come down here and chuck sticks up, which you could do then. You wouldn't do it now with all these houses around. But we just had fields. The worst thing you're going to do is land a stick on a horse. And that was it. But yeah, there's still conker trees. They're the same conker trees that I used to throw sticks up at and collect conkers from. Great to see them still here. They'll last here longer than I will. It's sad but inevitable really to see these houses where there were once fields, but I suppose what use are fields? Houses are more useful in this day and age. It's just great to see it survive. And there's still a few conkers up there. It was a few weeks later and there were conkers on that tree. And there are conkers on that tree, but only little ones. I would grab a stick and I would throw it up there just one more time. But I daren't. I'd probably dislocate my shoulder or something. Knowing my luck, I'd land on a car. Yeah, brilliant. What I didn't realise when I was looking on a map the other day is there's another side to Conker Lane across the road there, which also has conker trees. Now I honestly do not have any memories of that at all. If you'd have asked me, I'd have said no, Conker Lane was just this side. But there is another side, and I can't believe in the 60s we wouldn't have spotted that and gone down there. I'm sure we would have done. I just don't have any recollections of it. I remember being down here. I don't remember that one. But that's also Conker Lane, I believe. I'm going to put up a wonderful picture here. It dates to 1914 from more or less where I am now, approaching the crossing. And yeah, what a fantastic rural scene from this very spot. No houses back then, these were all fields. But you'll notice the crossing, the signal box is on the right, which is where it was until 1932, I think it was, about the same time they added the extra lines. They demolished that one and rebuilt it on the other side of the crossing. It's never used to make sense, this photo, but that's the reason why. That was the original box, which I think dated back a long time, 1870s, something like that. But they got rid of it in the early 1930s and built a bigger box, I think it was bigger, on the other side. I think there's any chance of us getting a train if I go back up on the bridge. Anything will do. Let's go over the bridge one more time. We never do this again. Problem is there's no signals to see, so I can't tell if a train's coming or not. Unlike back in the 60s when you had your old semaphore signals clanking down whenever a train was coming, and the signal box would be all sorts of clanks and whistles and bells going off. You knew there was a train nearby. There you go, look, someone's smiling on me. Close those gates, if only. Now I haven't a clue which direction it's coming from, which is no good if you're trying to video it. I'll move across so I can see the station at least. If only it was a steam train, eh? There we go. I wanted it to come from the station side, get a better view then, but it's not. At least we've got a train. Call that a train, I hear you all scream. I'm afraid it's about as exciting as you get nowadays. Snaking his way across the line. He's going to come in on platform 3 at Dorridge. I think he terminates here, to be honest. It says Dorridge. I think I'm being spoilt now because the barriers haven't gone up, which I have to assume means there is one now coming from the station direction. I can hear something coming from exactly the same direction. It sounds a bit more interesting, this one. Could be a freight train. I'll settle for a freight train, I'll be happy with that. Don't ask me to tell you what it is, but it's a freight train. That's good. Let me just move across a wee bit, I'll be able to see it better. There you go. I'm out of touch with locomotives now. I'm told that was a class 70 diesel. Ugly thing, but boy, very powerful. I don't think the old diesels I used to see would be able to haul that. That was a pretty impressive effort, but damned ugly things, I think. Anyway, just looking, yeah, the barriers haven't gone up, so there is still something coming, and it could still be something coming out of the station, so let's go and have a look. I've just worked it out that this is the first train we saw that did terminate at Dorridge, and he's now coming back. I don't think the motorists here are very happy. They've been sitting here for 10 minutes. In the old days, the signal box guy had just opened the gates, let them out. Why they've been held for so long, I don't know. But yeah, it's the returning train that we saw earlier, snaking back out onto the main line. There's another one coming, Jesus. Who was complaining there were no trains coming? It's a good one as well. Take it all back. 4 trains and they still haven't raised the barriers. Yay. Angry motorists depart. I love these old cottages that back onto the crossing. They've been here for a long time. Long time. Late 1800s, I would say. Just travelling along Mill Lane now. Well, I will be once I can get over the road. Mill Lane, shock horror, no big surprise, was named after the fact that there was a windmill here. Disappeared quite early, so it was a long time ago. And the windmill was on the left here, somewhere behind these houses, a good 150 yards behind these houses. I've seen it on maps. But yeah, not surprisingly, Mill Lane was named after that windmill. Building on the right is the Methodist Centre, the Methodist Church. Was actually first established here by the people like my parents that moved here in the late 50s, early 60s. Not that my parents were involved, but it was at that time, and it was the newcomers that came in at that time that wanted a Methodist church, and they got together and did the business. This interesting bit of paper here I found on the internet is the people who attended the first meeting of those residents that started the ball rolling to create a Methodist church here. So you know, your family name might be on there. Didn't ring any bells with me, but you never know. These are the people, these are the pioneers. Just passing the top of Poplar Road for your bearings. There was nothing down here really that ever brought us 60s kids really. We did come down here to get to other places. I did have a good friend that lived down here. His name was John Lees, L-E-E-S. Don't know where that name came from, but he did come to me the other day, and he did live down here. It wasn't here, it was a bit further along in what was like a early 1900s cottage. I'll try and find something similar. I know there are some down here. The house that catches my eye is this white one up here. It's kind of, I mean, maybe one of these down here, but I don't think so. It was an older cottage like this one. There's a few more behind it, so yeah, vague recollections. But a good mate of mine, John Lees. If anyone knows John, knew of his family, yeah, drop us a comment. I'd love to hear. Yeah, he introduced me to things like fishing, which I'd never done before. He was a good lad. And as I say, he lives somewhere around here. I mean, for all I know, the house is gone. It's been demolished, I don't know. But it had a certain age to it. It wasn't that building. But it's somewhere around here. Just coming off Mill Lane now, trying to circle around back towards the village. No idea what this road is called. It'll come to me in a minute. Got a very strange fragmented memory coming up here towards where this roundabout is. I mean, there used to be a hospital here, an asylum basically. I put up an old map with a rather unpleasant title just to show you the sort of tags we used to put on these places. Pretty grotesque. It wouldn't be allowed nowadays, but it was an asylum. When we were here in the 60s, I think it was called the Middleham Asylum, Middleham Hospital, Middleham something, rings a bell. I've got a photograph here of the ornate building at the heart of it all, so it's quite a significant place. And it had big open fields around it, so everything across the road from where we're coming up to was open fields back then. And we used to walk around them, and I can only assume it was because there were conker trees there. We wouldn't, I mean, there's no way we would have walked towards a hospital. But I do remember it. There's certain memories stick in my head about us going after conkers and having patients and staff walking nearby and us hiding from them. Probably quite terrified, but yeah, very strange memory. But it's all houses now. Widney Road is the road we've just come off. We're now going on a station road. And yeah, the asylum used to be sort of in that direction. I don't know how we entered it, whether it was off Grove Road or further down Station Road towards Knoll, but it was just open fields. We'd just drop our bikes and go across the fields, and it must have been a conquering venture. There cannot be any other reason why we'd have gone. It's the cricket club. It's my old car coming along here. If only. Knoll and Dorridge Cricket Club. That was definitely here in the 60s. Let's get across this road while we can. Back into Dorridge. You'd think these signs would be a bit further back along the road. But I always thought Dorridge had a bit of an identity crisis, really. It seemed to be always the sort of poor relation to Knoll. Even the railway station, when it first opened in the 1850s or whenever, was Knoll Station, even though it was in Dorridge. Knoll was just bigger. And even then, I think in Great Western days, it was Knoll and Dorridge Station. It only became Dorridge Station relatively recently. I guess Dorridge has probably grown where Knoll perhaps hasn't grown as much, and we're probably on a par now, if not Dorridge maybe even bigger, I don't know. This is not on my 60s memories map, I'm afraid. Station Road going down into the village. Others have mentioned that I've read various places on here. I can't tell you exactly where all of them are. I know there was a chrysanthemum nursery here that was quite famous. There's a lot of chrysanthemums out there that are named Dorridge this or Dorridge that. I'm trying to think the name of the guy who ran it. Is it Woolman's? Something like that, Woolman's Nursery. It was somewhere on here, somewhere on Station Road. May not be here, maybe a bit closer to the village, I don't know. It was somewhere on the right, I think, here, maybe totally. I know it was here, in Dorridge as it were, but I think it was somewhere here on Station Road. Again, if you know, let me know. I actually discovered on a map yesterday this pathway on the right is the other end of the path that we couldn't travel down to the school. I'm not going to bother trying to walk up there because I'm pretty sure you can't travel up this one either. And it's probably gated as well. Yeah. I didn't realise it went all the way through and out the other side, but it does. Although I don't remember it back in the 60s, because as a kid it would be of no interest to me. I know other people, older people from the 60s in Dorridge would tell you that we're coming up to opposite this junction ahead, what used to be Everson's, I think it was called, Everson's coal yard. You just drive in there, collect your coal basically. It was a big collection point. Whether that was for members of the public or businesses, I've no idea when they say coal yard what that actually means, but I think this tall building, it kind of looks old but isn't, was built on the site of Everson's coal yard. And I read that. I don't remember it. It's not part of my memories. So it's opposite the junction with Forest Road. Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm right. What I do know is this building coming up on the right in the distance just before Poplar Road. It used to be a pub, used to be the Vine. I think it closed a very long time ago. I think it closed in the early part of the 1900s. I did have a date in my head, but I can't remember. I think it's like 1928, something like that. So it's been gone a long time. So no one's going to remember that one. But yeah, it was the Vine, public house. It's been various things since then, including a Midland Bank. But yeah, it was the Vine public house. And that's going to bring my tour to an end. So I'm coming back into the village now. So I hope you found something of interest. These things are bloody difficult things to do. Shooting on a video camera when there's everybody around you thinking, what's he up to? What's he trying to do? Yeah, it puts me off, but I've ticked all the boxes I wanted to tick for me personally. As I say, I hope some of it rings bells with you and you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.